Good morning, Jolly Cruise family. My name is Jason, and I am the Jolly Cruise vlogger. And on today's episode of Breaking Waves, news stories from the last week-ish. Well, we're actually not going to cover a lot of news stories this week. We are going to go over the ticket contract. Yes, I know that kind of sounds a little bit boring, but did you know there's actually some interesting things in there on what you can and cannot do? But in an effort to make this somewhat entertaining and not a cure for insomnia, I'm not going to read everything to you. I'm just going to cover some of the highlights. And so sit back, get you a cup of coffee. Today mine is a Christmas cookie. It says, "Dear Santa, these cookies are for you." It's a Christmas cookie coffee mug. I can pretty much guarantee I got it at the Goodwill or, some kind of thrift store like that because I do a lot of thrift shopping. So if you're a thrifter too and you see a cool coffee mug, especially one that's a Christmas mug, think of me, send it to me. I appreciate it. And now let's just get started on what's actually in the ticket contract. I actually used a Royal Caribbean ticket contract just to give some light on Royal Caribbean and take some of the heat off of Carnival because Carnival's always got the heat. But you'll kind of be surprised. There's a lot of the same information on both Royal Caribbean ticket contract and a Carnival ticket contract. The ticket contract for Royal Caribbean is actually 17 pages long, and I'm definitely not going to read that because I'm looking for some entertainment value and not the cure for insomnia like I mentioned before. So we'll break it off into sections. We'll highlight the sections. Mainly we'll be covering section number 9, which are the do's and don'ts of what you can and cannot do while you're on the ship. So if you're not familiar with the ticket contract, you've never seen one, you've never read one, anything like that, this is one of those boxes that you check that said, yes, you've read the terms and conditions, so you can print your boarding pass and your luggage tickets so you can actually get on the ship. So let's look at some of the things you've actually let the cruise company do while you're on the cruise ship. Sections 1 and 2 of the ticket contract are all definitional. It's, what is a vessel? What is a carrier? I'm not going to read all those things because they're pretty self-explanatory. So we're not going to get into those too much. We're going to start kind of with section 3, which talks about luggage. Section 3 focuses on what happens if you have broken luggage on the cruise, as well as what you're not allowed to bring on the cruise ship. Specifically, it mentions that you are not allowed to bring any illegal controlled substances, including medical marijuana, fireworks, live animals, weapons, firearms, explosives, or other hazardous materials. But it doesn't stop there, because that's just in that section here. Now, if you go on and the RoyalCaribbean.com into the FAQ section and say, what are items are prohibited, it brings up this whole list here, and I'm not going to read them all. But if you're ever thinking about it, you cannot bring your motorcycle or your ATV, your Ninja throwing stars, your nunchucks. You can't bring mace, you can't bring pepper spray, you can't bring things like that. But here's a whole list of things that you cannot bring on a cruise ship. Now, I don't know about you, but 99.44% of the things that are on this list, I would never think about bringing on a cruise ship. But it's like every other rule. The reason that it is a rule is because somebody tried it or did it at one point. Also, section 3 talks about broken luggage, what happens, what's covered, what's not covered. Basically, if your luggage breaks, something inside your luggage breaks, and you can prove that it's negligence on the part of Royal Caribbean, they'll cover it up to $5,000 tops. But, yeah, that's kind of hard to prove, because in here it does say that they are not responsible for any personal loss or property damage to your luggage unless you can prove it is negligence on the part of the cruise line. Section 4 actually covers safety and health protocols. Basically, make sure that you're healthy enough to actually go on the cruise ship. It also talks about that you are going to be in close contact with people from all over the country, all over the world, that you don't know what other people are carrying. For example, me coming here from Florida, I might be having the new alligator flu or something like that. I might be a carrier for that, but I might not show any symptoms. But if I sneeze or cough in the elevator and you breathe it in, then all of a sudden you get the alligator flu, but you're from like Idaho where there are no alligators and you get sick. This whole section is just information now that you may come in close contact with somebody who's carrying something that you don't already have, that your body may not be immune to, so be careful when you're in public areas. The next section actually goes on to cover medical care, that says if you go to medical services, whether it be there on the ship or in port or anything like that, that you are actually responsible for paying for it yourself. So whether it's an $18 Band-Aid that you get from medical services, or it's a $20,000 ambulance ride from the port to the hospital because you had a heart attack or something worse than that. It just says that the ship is not going to cover that because you're seeking the medical condition because you've had it, you're responsible for paying for it. But if you buy trip insurance or you have your own health insurance, yes, that will help cover things like that. But the cruise ship is not going to be responsible for covering any of that. They'll help you organize it, but they won't pay for it. Section 6, which is the next one, is actually one of the shorter ones. It just talks about trip excursions, tours, anything like that you arrange to happen off of the cruise ship is under your own dime. The ship doesn't cover that. You have to pay for it for yourself. Very basic, very simple. Section 7 is actually where it does start to get a little bit more interesting because it does talk about what happens if the cruise line cancels something. Now, I'm going to read it because it's going to be a lot easier, then we'll talk a little bit about it. It says, a carrier may for any reason or at any time without prior notice cancel, advance, postpone, or deviate from any scheduled sailing, port of call, destination, lodging, or any activity on or off the vessel, or substitute another vessel at the port of call, destination, lodging, or activity. Basically, yeah, they can cancel for any reason. They can cancel a port. They can cancel something that happens on the ship. They can cancel anything that they want to at any time, and they do not have to give you prior notice, and they do not have to give you compensation for said change. And it also says in there, if you caught that they can actually change the cruise ship. So even though that you might book a cruise for the cruise ship, they have the right and they have the ability to change that ship at any time, and there's nothing really you can do about it. It then goes on to say that the ship can deviate without liability, so they don't owe you anything, from any scheduled sailing and can land at any port, especially if the ship that there believes there's hostilities, blockages, prevailing weather conditions, labor conflict, strikes aboard or ashore, breakdown of the vessel. Basically, for any reason that they have, the cruise ship can switch the ports of call. But in the end, if your cruise is 100% totally canceled, you'll get a full refund of everything that you have paid. But on the same time, if it's a 7-day cruise and you do 4 days of the cruise and you're like, oh, no, we got to go home, so you missed the last 3 days, you're only going to be refunded 3 days of the cruise and not 4 days of the cruise. So everything is prorated if the cruise does get canceled. Now, if you cancel the cruise, there's 2 things that the cruise ship does need to take into consideration before they determine how much refund you're actually going to get. The length of your cruise, is it up to 5 days or it's 6 days or longer? And how many days out before embarkation day do you cruise? For example, on the shorter cruises where they're 5 days or less, it starts at 75 days. If you cancel at 75 days or more before embarkation, then that's 100% refund. But if at 74 days and closer towards embarkation day, the refund amount that you're going to get drops from 100 to 75 to 50 to 25 to 0. Now, it's the same thing for the longer cruises, the ones that are 6 nights and longer, but you start off at 90 days. So you go from like 90 to 75, 75 to 60, 60 to 30. Again, anything under 30 days, you forfeit all of it. They do not have to refund you anything. Everything is based on when you cancel. So if you know you're not going to be able to make a cruise, the earlier that you cancel, the better. And now we're coming on to Section 9. Section 9 says that you as a cruise passenger agree to all the rules that Royal Caribbean has set out. You agree to follow all the laws that are set out by not only the United States, but also the countries that you're going to. And that if you do not follow them, there are going to be consequences. I know it's very shocking that, behavior equals consequences. Strange. Some of the rules that they have: do not go into crew-only areas. Additionally, now this is something that's a little bit interesting because I've seen this happen in Facebook groups where somebody's selling t-shirts and things like that ahead of time, or they're selling bracelets. But you cannot market, advertise, promote, provide, or sell products or services while you're on board. So what that means, if you are a sole proprietor of a business where you make a product or you sell a particular service. It could be something small as an Etsy store or even a travel advisor. You cannot promote your business. You cannot sell your business. You cannot advertise your business. You cannot do anything like that while on board. It also goes on to say that you, as a cruise traveler, it is your responsibility to make sure that you have all the proper travel documents. There's a zero tolerance policy for any illegal activity. Very, very logical on that one. And if you're traveling with minor children, it is your responsibility as their parent or legal guardian on this particular cruise that you make sure that they follow all the rules as well. If the kids act up, not only are the kids, but also the parents are held responsible for any of their actions. And yes, like Carnival Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean does have a 1 a.m. curfew for any guest that is under the age of 18. Additionally, when you check that box that says you read the terms and conditions and you agree to those, one of the terms and conditions that you're actually letting the cruise ship do is you're letting them to come into your cabin at any time to question you, to talk to you, to ask for your personal identification if they believe that you or somebody in your group is threatening harm to somebody else, posing some kind of security risk, doing some kind of illegal activity, possible hurting themselves or anything like that. You actually give the company and the cruise ship the right to check on you. You're also giving the cruise line the ability to not let you or anybody else in your cruise party back on board after an embarkation port because of something that you did or something somebody in your party did, whether it's illegal activity or cause harm to somebody else while you're in port. The cruise line can refuse you allowed back onto there. Additionally, the cruise line can move your cabin. They can put you on quarantine. They can cut your alcohol package off. They can cut your drink package off. They can cut all your packages off and force you to stay in your room. But it's all going to be based on your attitudes and how you're handling yourself while you're on the cruise ship. If you're threatening harm, you're doing bad things to other people, you're not following the rules, yes, they have the right to do that. And you don't have any way to combat that because you signed the agreement that said you would follow the rules. So again, there are consequences to bad behavior. Also, if you're a pier runner and you miss the cruise ship, you're not entitled to any refund. It is your responsibility to get home. It's your responsibility to get to the next cruise port and get back on the cruise at that time. Additionally, if it's a round trip cruise, like you're going from Miami, the Bahamas, Mexico, things like that, and back to Miami, you can't use that as a one-way cruise. You can't use that, I'm going to leave Miami and I'm going to get off in Cozumel and I'm going to live in Cozumel. You can't do that. That is illegal and you will actually be fined for that and most likely banned from actually cruising again. I do encourage you to read the terms and conditions, read the ticket contract so that you actually know what your rights are, what the rights of the cruise line are, and what you're actually signing. That's common knowledge. You should read anything that you're actually signing anyway, because it is a legally binding contract. Behave. Don't do anything illegal. Don't cause harm to yourself or anybody else. And have a good time. Because we all know that a cruise day is better than a work day any day. And if we get kicked off or banned from a cruise ship, we can't have that experience ever again. So don't do the wrong thing. Always do the right thing. And have a great day.